Couple minutes before we get started.
This meeting is being recorded.
We are about 2 minutes away from starting today's session. Once again, welcome to those of you who are sitting patiently in our waiting room in anticipation of today's upcoming AI webinar. We're going to start in about a minute or two. Thank you. Okay, let's get started. Hi all and welcome. My name is Lauren Silver. I'm the marketing and creative guy for HRAI, and I'd like to welcome you to today's really exciting, inspirational webinar on generative AI and HVAC, practical wins that you can implement starting today. Regarding just some housekeeping issues regarding, first of all, the session's being recorded, so it will be available after the fact on YouTube. We will make links. We will send out links to everyone who is registered for today's webinar. We will be promoting the link in our newsletter as well, or you can simply go to YouTube and search HRAI. We have our own page. Click on the videos and you'll see it there. Probably in about a day or two. Takes us that long to get things posted properly. So by Thursday, this webinar should be up and running on YouTube. Regarding other questions you might have, you'll see at the bottom of your window there a little Q&A button. I invite you all to submit your questions in writing in that little Q&A area. And Laura Lee Hagee, who oversees the wholesaler division for HRAI, in addition to many other things, she'll be culling and prioritizing those questions to present to today's speaker after he's finished. This is all based on putting them in some form of priority and time permitting. So speaking of time permitting, I'm not going to take up very much more time than that. I'm really excited and completely unintimidated about today's AI session. I know AI can be intimidating, but I had the pleasure of seeing today's presenter speak on the subject at a conference in Atlanta, live and in person. So I can assure you he's not AI generated himself. He's the real deal and he's great. And this entire session is kind of a warm up for a breakout session that's going to be taking place at our AGM and conference in Halifax this coming September. You can also find out details about that on our HRAI website. But back to the speaker. Nick Pericle has spent the last decade on digital transformation initiatives with manufacturers, distributors, from branches to boardrooms. A managing director at the software consulting firm ProfitOptics, Nick is best known for architecting and leading the implementation of customized solutions which have both saved organizations tens of thousands of efficiency hours and added millions to their bottom line. And that's probably American, so in Canadian, that's billions. Nick has a passion for taking the topic of AI and making it very real in the moment for distributors, showing how it can improve productivity, efficiency, and also demonstrating what the future of an organization might look like in this intelligence age. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Nick to take charge and please enjoy the webinar. It's going to be great. Thank you.
Lauren, thank you very much for that introduction. I appreciate the kind words and appreciate the opportunity to be here with you and with other members of HRAI. It's really a privilege, and I don't take the responsibility lightly, so thank you. And I hope that we all come away from today with a confidence that AI can be very approachable and empowering with what we do in distribution. As Lauren shared, myself and my organization, we spend time day in and day out in distribution and in the supply chain, understanding what are the opportunities that exist because of how we have built up the supply chain, and how can this new technology be applied in a way that is advanced yet still acceptable. What I hope to go through today is to show you some real life examples and give you some practical tips that you can use in interacting with a variety of large language model tools. I'll share with you some principles that you can take to get started, but then also as you look to scale these up within your organization, how we can approach that as well. Let's go ahead and get started with it. It was December 2022 when I first heard of generative AI. We had done some predictive analytics and machine learning before that, hadn't really applied it within the supply chain and in our work in distribution on the technology side up until that point. But December 2022 changed everything. It's when ChatGPT came out, and since then there's been a flurry of activity. And this is probably the dozenth webinar that you've attended going through GenAI. What I've found is that when people interact with a generative AI tool like ChatGPT, there's typically an uncomfort or discomfort that we go through because it's like a chatbot. It's like a Google search, and we treat it as such. And I think that's a mistake. Some of these emotions that we feel there's apprehension around generative AI and what it can do, the promises it has, or there's a lot of excitement. Because you're on this webinar, you probably fall onto the right side of the screen with the excitement side of what this is either doing for you today, your belief in what this can do. But there are some realities, and I like to be very upfront about what those are and limitations with generative AI, what it's not designed for, where it falls short now, where it still may fall short in the future. So we'll touch on some of those. This Gartner hype cycle I like to put on at the beginning of any presentation that I have about artificial intelligence, because when you look at this, immediately your mind goes to a spot on this cycle. You may feel like you have really high expectations of what this can do, or maybe stakeholders in your organization, your boss, or others, they might be in that trough of disillusionment where we're waiting to see where is the promise of AI really going to hit. I hope by the end of this, if we have time and I share this again, that you're on that slope of enlightenment in the next 40, 45 minutes that we have together. And as you continue to engage with AI, that there are real things that you can do today. My reality when I went deep on artificial intelligence is I separated the intelligence aspect, what the capabilities were of this technology, away from the practical side of it right now. And we end up merging those together because that's where the value is. But when you really take a look at what's happening in frontier labs, at OpenAI, at Meta, at Google, and at some of these other organizations that are building out large language models, you have these sleepless nights. And some of you on the webinar today may have recently had one. If not, I apologize in advance if I cause you a sleepless night. But these are what these sleepless nights are. The first is where when you get hands-on with an AI tool and you really start using it, not you've heard about it, but you really start using it, you're in awe and you're almost dumbstruck by how much information it has available to it and how quickly it can pull it back. You start wondering, how does it know that? How did it get that information? How did it make those connections between two seemingly unrelated instances of information? The second is where you get a little scared. there's some fear. Now, this could be fear on the business side. It could also be fear on the personal side, which isn't to be dismissed. But there's an uncertainty that comes with this. We've opened Pandora's box. What does this look like within distribution for our companies, for our employees, for our colleagues, for our high schoolers, or for our children? The last one, and what again I hope to inspire you to, is optimism. I heard at a conference recently and attending a lot of events in distribution, someone shared that there's an optimism that comes now with being in the supply chain in the world, despite the obstacles that we've had to overcome, despite the challenges, despite the inherent difficulty and complexity that comes with distribution. There's no better time to be working because of what new technology is enabling us to do. And so I hope to inspire you to optimism within this. I shared at the beginning this principle that generative AI is not Google. And as I show you some of the examples that we'll get into, you'll see how we try and not treat it like Google, but the Google muscle that we all have embedded within us is very strong. Most people, when I ask them what they're using generative AI for, the first is always emails and summarizing emails and helping write emails. But then the other tends to be information retrieval. And this is one area that generative AI is decent at and has the ability to complete, but there are better methods to go find information or find facts that are related to this. When we're presented with a search box in a tool like ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity, we end up treating it like Google, where we type in keywords. Our minds, whether we're in marketing, on the marketing side of the business or not, our minds have been trained to use keywords. Now, I find this interesting because when we go and we talk to younger generations, those who are just entering the workforce, or if you go even younger, kids these days, there's a lot of things that they say, but they don't say, let's Google that, or let me Google that. They're starting to say, let's ask AI. And that's a fundamental difference on how we interact with these tools. And we'll get into an example of that. The reason why it's different than Google is because this technology, ChatGPT, Copilot, Perplexity, any of these generative AI tools, they function much more like teammates than tools. Now, that can sound like a hyperbolistic thing to say, and it can sound like exaggeration. What I find is that if we think about these as teammates, as an entity that we can talk to, that we can brainstorm with, that we can give feedback to if it gets it right or if it gets it wrong, that provides a much better experience. And a very realistic way of looking at this is you'll see in many of the demos that we're going to do that I talk to the tools. There's a little less typing and more talking. And there's a principle that we share there. Another assumption that we're going to both prove and disprove, when we ask people what belief they have of what generative AI will do for them, most of that is actually automation, where there are ideas of we want to automate this certain type of process, or we want to input data, have an analysis or process run, and then there be a consistent output. And generative AI, by definition, is not automation. That A, and of course, we all know what AI stands for, but that A does not stand for automation. And many of the benefits that we've received with technology up to this point has either been a better tool for more efficiency or automation. And generative AI is not that way. We need to wrap it in another form of technology in building blocks in order to get to that. And we'll share at the end some examples of tools that are either available or that you can build some of that automation yourself. And then just two more principles before we get to the hands-on portion of what we're doing today. This principle, when people use AI tools and they're interacting and asking questions with it, and they get, let's say, a subpar answer back, or they get information back that they find is either incomplete or too short, it's because of this. When we're interacting with a generative AI tool in the prompt box, or the chat box opens up for us to type into, and we type in and then we hit enter, the information that is sent over to the large language model, to the AI itself, includes both the information that we put in, the user prompt, as well as the system prompt. And the system prompt is the information that these AI companies give in order to provide both a safe and positive user experience when interacting with AI. And I find that this explains a lot of the issues that people run into when they're working with AI. The system prompt is designed to do the following. It's designed for safety and guidance. So it won't allow you to get to recreate harmful, like it won't give you instructions on how to create a nuclear bomb. It doesn't give you instructions on how to harm others or harm society. It tries to redirect you to safety. But it also tries to provide a positive user experience. This is why oftentimes generative AI has a tendency to be very agreeable, where it will tell you that you have great questions, that what you've just asked is a great activity or great exercise to go through. By nature, it tries to please you. And providing negative feedback is not a strong part of that system prompt. And so there are ways that we need to be very intentional about how we overcome that. And then the last one is, as distributors, we're very familiar with cost and profitability. While many of these frontier labs are still being subsidized by venture capital and the sheer amount of capital that's going into building them out and all the infrastructure around them, there still is a cost that they have to run. Every query that we send over or every prompt that we send, an action that takes, there's a cost to it. And these models, they try and optimize that cost. And generally, the idea for us with cost is length, the length of the information that comes back. There are other aspects, and we'll show you how you can help overcome that with some specific instructions or with changing models. But generally, when people are dissatisfied, it comes down to that. And the last principle is what we see within a tool like ChatGPT or Copilot or Claude or Perplexity or any AI tool is that this is really a preview to the larger power. I shared earlier the difference between separating the intelligence from the software. We have a preview through these tools. There are real applications that we have and we hope to share with you, but we have a preview to what can be built if we wrap automation around it, if we connect it to our data, if we give it better context and higher context around our business. There are secure ways to do this. Once you do that, you start to build much more of a product or a platform versus this point chat solution that, again, there's still value in getting the 20%, maybe 50% efficiency gains. But when we start talking about what the future looks like, it's much more of an integrated and then eventually automated experience. So the value that GenAI has now and into the future, the reason we like to show hands-on, and we'll preempt this by giving some just some thoughts, is I have young children, and I've recently watched those children learn how to ride bikes. And the principle between learning how to ride a bike and being hands-on with AI, I think holds extremely true, that we can watch it as much as we want. We can use some of the ways that we've historically learned technology, like using training wheels, which I thought training wheels, that was the only way to ride a bike. But there are new ways to do this. And because generative AI is a fundamentally different technology, it functions differently. There are new ways to ride a bike, and there are new ways to use AI. My young children learned how to ride a bike on a balance bike. If you go to any park in the world, you'll see balance bikes. You rarely see training wheels, but you see balance bikes. And the reason why you see these is because children are able to learn at a much younger age the muscle memory and the activities that are needed in order to learn balance, in order to learn forward motion, and really to be much more hands-on instead of put in a protective nature. My young daughter was 3 when she first started riding this balance bike. And the very first time that we ever put her on a two-wheeler, we put her on, and this may come across a little laggy over the video here, but this was the first time that we ever put her on a two-wheeler, and she went forward. It was because she went through the process of being on a balance bike, working and putting that in motion. And that's what I encourage anybody to do when they're working with generative AI. So with that, we're going to open up a couple of the tools here. Mostly today, we're going to use ChatGPT, we're going to use Claude, and we're going to use Perplexity. Time permitting, we may show Copilot, we may show Gemini as well. We recognize that there are different tools. Each organization might have sanctioned or provided a tool to you. Most of the core functionality overlaps. There are some differences, but most of the tools are they end up coalescing into a single interface. Now, one word with this. As it relates to security, this is by far and away the most talked about aspect, and there are always questions around this. Ultimately, the advice that I give is to work with your IT team in order to reach your own conclusion about which AI tool is safe, secure, and permissible for your use cases. Now, with that, there are some principles that I'll share to help guide this solution. Every tool that I'm going to show you today is the paid version of this tool. It's actually the Teams version of this that is intended for collaboration and for secure enterprise use. The tool that I'm with ChatGPT, the enterprise or the version that we're going to show you is the Teams version. This is going to cost you $25 to $30 a month, depending on if you pay annually or pay monthly. And with that, the language that we look for in the terms of service and in the T's and C's of each one of these companies is the following. Is our content or is our data used to train the model? And with that, we've gone through and we've reviewed for all three of these that in the paid version, especially on the Teams version, that with both ChatGPT, with Anthropic Claude, and with Perplexity, and then also with Copilot and Gemini, that all of those do not use your data that you put into the tool to train, meaning the information that I load in about my products and about my pricing and about my strategy will not be used to educate the intelligence for others, my competitors, or partners that are in the space to leverage that information. Now, again, we always encourage everybody to work with their IT team and their security leaders that they have at the company in order to arrive at a similar conclusion. This is an exercise that we believe everybody should go through for their own enterprise. From what we've seen and for the purposes of what we're going to show you today, that is what we are operating under. So with that, let's open it up. And we find that this is always the most interesting part for people is actually using the tools hands-on. Now, I'll tell you for the purpose of what we're going to do today, I have some pre-prepared prompts, but we will freestyle a little bit. The work that we do in distribution and in just the busyness back and forth, it is rarely linear. And so we'll come up with some ideas. And if you have ideas or things that you would like to see or questions you have, please submit those, and Laura Lee will be reviewing those, and whether we answer those or whether we provide some information afterwards or at AGM, happy to do that. So within ChatGPT, we're going to start with a relatively straightforward example that we have. We're going to go and look specifically at this idea that every distributor has to work with, and that's working with product data and enhancing the data that we have around product content. So I'm going to go ahead and put in here, I'm going to define and say you're an HVAC copywriter for contractors who buy from distributors. I'm going to paste in just the raw information that I have about a product. ChatGPT and Generative AI is very good with unstructured data. And then I'm going to give it some instructions: compelling product description, key selling points, installation benefits, customer value prop. And this is what's important to me: practical benefits and ROI for contractors. So with that, let's go ahead and hit enter. And what the large language model is doing is it's taking that information, running it through the connections that it has made and what it has learned in its training, and it's going to provide back to me, per my instructions, a product description of 75 words, key selling points for contractors. It's going to give me installation benefits of what's needed here, and it's also going to give me customer value proposition. Now, what I find when most people do this is they expect one action, one outcome from interacting with generative AI. You can see here, we actually stacked together quite a few actions in this. What we can do, remember, this is a teammate, not a tool. So if we wanted to come in here and we wanted to say the following, let's just go look at these key selling points for contractors. Can you compare and contrast a couple of different types of contractors that might be using this product? And let's create a table view of the various types of key selling points. Call those out, what the differences are, and let's analyze that together. All right, so you see I'm talking to it naturally. I'm not thinking too much about the specific prompt while I'm going through this exploratory exercise here. So what this is going to do is it's going to create a comparison table for me. all right, here's a key selling point. And then I didn't tell it the specific types of contractors. I said just in general, the different types that would buy this. So we have our residential retrofit, new construction, small town, family owned, high volume regional. And it's going to give me what the differences are. How will each one of those specific segments look at the benefits of this selling point? Typically with product content data, we found that that's had to be a very high context task. And many times we think about it as a set it and forget it type activity. With generative AI, we can now start to imagine what a much more dynamic interface would be for that. How can we work with this information and present it not just to the market, but to particular customers that we have? So let's just go through this a little bit more. We have reliability, we have ease of installation, accessory compatibility, thermostat, flexibility, ecobee, edge or ecobee, natural gas, brand. Okay, so analysis and key takeaways. Retrofit, flexibility, reliability, and upsell. New construction subcontractors. Let's do this. That's a lot of information. I want to say this. All right, can you provide a summary of just the various attitudes and the values or what each one of these contractors value? Put that into an easy summary for me to understand and put it into a table format. You'll see I do table format a lot because generative AI has a tendency to come back with bullet point lists. But tables are a lot easier for me to understand. It's how I consume information the best. So you'll see you have contractor type, and then it says attitude, what they value most, buying behavior, key differentiator. So now I'm going from that initial product content, and I'm continuing in the flow of what the analysis is that I need to do. I'll end up going back to the product content, but so you can see in the same conversation, I'm analyzing. This is as if I had a very smart intern sitting next to me that can go off and do tasks, and we're continuing in the same context this type of activity. So let's just read this a little bit. All right, residential retrofit contractor, solution-oriented, homeowner-focused, new construction HVAC, small town, family-owned contractor. Okay, this is good. Now let's do this. Now, can you put this into a graphic that I can use for a presentation that I'm going to be sharing and add in some different illustrations for each one of the contractor types as well? So you'll see I took that information. I could edit it if I wanted to, but I'm going to have it actually generate a graphic here for me or an image, and this will take anywhere from a minute to 90 seconds. And what this is doing is generative AI originally was very good at text and predicting what the next best word was. Since then, it has gotten very good at both images and video. And with images, it can go through and it can create both diagrams, it can create charts, it can create pictures. It's not quite there for products in a way that I have yet seen people be comfortable with in order to share out with the market. But the pace of change that we've seen go through is actually quite remarkable of how good it has gotten at taking information and then building it out into different formats, visual being one of those. I'm not going to make you sit here and watch paint dry for the next 60 seconds. So let's move on to our next example of this. We're going to go to customer prospecting and research. Now, for this, we're going to use a tool called Perplexity, and we'll come back and look at this image here just in a few moments. So this tool called Perplexity is one that's interesting because what Perplexity did is they connected their large language model to the internet. So this tool, like most of them, can go through and it can think and it will give, or it makes connections and provides back answers. But it also has the ability to connect to the internet and to go out and imagine you open up 10 different tabs after you do a Google search and you have to read through each one. It can summarize all of those together. Where I've found a lot of benefit in looking at this tool is using it as almost a Zoom info competitor, or using it to identify information that you would typically go through and have to look on Google for. So on this one, we're going to say I'm an HVAC distributor in Toronto. I'm targeting commercial contractors. I want you to find the top 5 commercial HVAC contractors in Toronto, current construction projects over 2 million, industry trends, and key decision makers. Now, we're going to run this a few times, and I'm going to show you just some of the capabilities that these AI tools have and how they function. Let's go back here. Did this end up generating? Oh, there you go. So you can see here, we have a residential retrofit, new construction, and high volume regional, just to give you a sense of what that looks like. And I think it gave me another version as well. Just tying the loose end on that example here. Let's go back to Perplexity now. So again, we're going and doing some market research on customers and information that's available. Now, what's neat about Perplexity is it gives us our answer, but it also allows us to look up our sources. So remember how I said opening 10 tabs and you would need to go through and review those manually? Perplexity opened up 37 of those. We can also see the logic that it went through. What did it understand our request to be? How did it break down what we were asking for? What did it look for? What keywords did it break out to go search and then summarize back up so we can get an understanding of that? And we can do more of our research that way. I've actually found that for people who are looking at integrating AI into workflow processes, not just for individual or team use, but if they're building a tool within their organization or looking to work with a vendor to implement a tool, using a tool like Perplexity, or I'll show you another way you can do this in ChatGPT to see how it works. What are the steps that it's going through to break down this prompt into actions? Where is it going off and searching? Where is it making assumptions? That's a good way to learn how your teammate is thinking. So that steps is a good one to bring away. So if we go look at our answer, I'm going to zoom out just a little bit here. So the top 5 HVAC contractors in Toronto, we have Spring Break Mechanical, MSB Mechanical, gives us some information about that. You'll see it provides links out to those in case I wanted to go do research. We have Central HVAC Plumbing, Energy Clean, Laird and Son Heating and Air. Now, before I go on, I'm going to kick off another query here. Now, what I'm going to do is, I have some options on how deep I want to go in searching for this. With AI, I find that people have this expectation, just like how most humans, when a new technology comes out, we're usually very patient with the latency or how long it takes to run a process, but we quickly become accustomed. It's like how on our cell phones, when the internet doesn't load immediately and we think the internet has to go to the cell tower, then up to the satellite, and then back to our phone. If it doesn't load immediately, we get frustrated. With AI, the more that we increase that latency intentionally, the better experience we get, and typically the better answers that we get. I'm not going to run that here. I'll show you another way that we can run that in ChatGPT. But if I wanted to get deeper information, I could do that. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, all right, those 5 examples, Perplexity, that you gave me for those contractors were great. I want to get 5 more. And then what I want you to do is I want you to determine what is the best way for me to contact them. I want you to find out either who their purchasing manager is, find me their LinkedIn profile of that individual. If there's contact information, give that. And then help me understand what's something that I could share or when I go talk to them that would get their attention based off of me as an HVAC distributor to them. So again, that was a very teammate-oriented task. I'm sharing, hey, this is what I want to do. Here are some ways that I want to approach that. Go off and do this. And Perplexity is going to go run. It will go do this research on each one of these, and then it'll break down the 5 that we initially got, but also 5 more. And we'll see in here, so we have 5 more. We have Atlas Care. It gives me some contact information. It looks like I'm not getting anything for the purchasing manager or key contact. Let's see if any of these came through. No, none of these specifically came through. So let's see if we can go a little bit deeper on that for these. But everything else seems to look pretty good. It gave me the contact information, things like this. So let's do this. All right, for those 5 that you gave me, the ones that are called Atlas Care, Tempashore, Sunnyside, DuPont, and Advantage AirTech, I want you to go and find me people on LinkedIn who are at these organizations, maybe on the executive team, people that I can connect with and see what they're up to. Let's push the AI a little bit in this way. Didn't find the answer the first time, but just like how an intern might come back and not give you the right information or make an incorrect assumption or not go all the way, let's just give it a little push in that direction. This is called giving it feedback. All right, great. So Atlas Care, it's going to give me some information on the president, the marketing director, maybe the former president. Okay. Target Roger for executive level partnerships. Roger, if you're watching this, I apologize for strategic discussions. Contact Len, he's the owner and director of operations. We have Zerzi Jafari. So you'll see, didn't give us the information up front, but pushing the large language model and asking it to go do that again or look at it in a slightly different way. I was very specific on purchasing manager. We opened that aperture up a little bit to get access like this. So this type of market research where we're not just finding information, but we're actually going and then asking for outreach tips. So if I wanted to do this, all right, let's go one level deeper on these outreach tips. Instead of just the surface level one that you gave me, give me one level deeper. What's something that I could share, something that really matters to them based off of their company, what we read about them online, that I could use as an introduction in order to educate myself and show that I am there as a distributor for them, both in the parts and the supplies that they need, but also in true partnership. So we're talking this out, we're sharing this. This is a good opportunity for me to say, if there is a way that your organization likes to sell or likes to show up and educate yourself on customers, you can include that as part of the instructions that you would put in here. So we have deep dive outreach, what matters, commitment to energy efficient, and it gives me all sorts of links that I can go look at here. All sorts of details that I can get into. Deeper outreach angle, same thing for temperature, and I go on and on and on in how that works. So this tool Perplexity is very good at searching out for information, bringing it back, but then allowing me the ability to go through and do further work or analysis or prep what the next stage is. I could have it help me write the emails. I could have it output information. Let's do this. Hey, we run HubSpot for our CRM. Can you put this into a format that I could export some of this background into HubSpot for each one of these companies? And whether you use HubSpot, whether you use a different CRM, we could ask to export that information so I can easily go load it into the CRM. And down here, if I scroll down, it should give me the ability to download the Excel file for that. All right, that's Perplexity. That's always a favorite one of mine. All right, the next one that I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over to Claude. And this is one that is an interesting AI tool. The background of the folks who started Claude, they were actually with OpenAI, and they went for a very privacy-first approach. I really admire the organization and not just what they've done with developing artificial intelligence, but the intentionality that they've taken with both the product and how they think about what the future looks like. If you want a sleepless night, you can go read online. Just go Google Claude CEO AI predictions and what the CEO of Claude or Anthropic, the company, is thinking about with the future of AI. That certainly caused me a sleepless night these last few weeks. So one thing that I like about Claude is within it, they have embedded the ability for the application itself to actually write code and generate code. Now, for many of the folks that I work with in distribution, the extent of our technical prowess may be limited to Excel and what we do there, and certainly a great tool. Many of the benefits that we can get, though, are where we don't necessarily need to know the code in order to write and to do some things that I'll show you, but we can be creative in what we think or what we envision. So a great use of Claude, and you can do this in ChatGPT as well, but I can do something like this. I'm going to talk to it again. Hey, Claude. All right, so I am coming to you with a long transcript that I had of a contract creation process. We've been going through, and our contract creation, how we do this has been a little bit of a black box, and it's some legacy knowledge that people have at the organization. And we went through and we transcribed a meeting where some people at the org talked about how they create contracts. And we have the text of it. And I'm hoping that you can help me generate a diagram and make sense of all this. Can you help me do that? So you'll see I'm talking to it as a teammate, and I'm asking, hey, can you help me do that? What do I need to do here? And it says, yeah, I'd be happy to, like in the positive aspect of this. It To get started, could you share the transcript with me? Once I see the content, I'll be able to do all of this. So I have that transcript, and I'm going to say, here it is. And what Claude's going to do is it's going to use the artificial intelligence, the AI that it has, and it's going to read the transcript, break it down. I gave it context that it's for contract creation within distribution, and it's going to go through and first build out what that workflow looks like, but then it's going to generate out for me the flow chart of this. Now, it's doing it in a way where it's actually generating code to make that happen. Now, on the right-hand side of the screen, you may be thinking, okay, what value is all of that? We're getting all of these different elements here. But what this comes down to is distribution. We see that we've actually been operating with our own AI since the beginning of the industry, when many of the companies that we work at started. But it's not artificial intelligence. It's this idea of accumulated intelligence. We sometimes call that tribal knowledge. And a lot of the times that is trapped or it's siloed in the minds of the people that we are working with. And the ability to get that out, to actually sit someone down and have them draw out a diagram is painstaking. But most people can dictate and they can talk about it. Now, we don't always get it right. Humans actually hallucinate quite often. But this, what I'm showing you here on the screen, where we can go through and from a transcript, we can break out and we can say, here's our contract creation process. We get a request, we review it, we get an initial contract outline. This was not called out specifically in the transcript, meaning the individual who gave this, and we modified this from a real example that we went through and did with one of our clients. They did not call this out. There was rambling. We went back and forth in it. When we were doing the interview, we said, hey, can you go back and actually tell us a little bit more about that? Generative AI is remarkable at picking up and providing structure to unstructured elements. It's also very good at making us rethink what is data. Conversations are more and more becoming data, where it won't just go through and give us this, but we can say this. Hey, now what I want you to do is I want you to give me that same diagram, but based off of your knowledge of best practices of how to create contracts, can you add some red boxes that give recommendations on where this can be improved or where there are efficiencies? Highlight the area and then provide a specific action or a potential new step for this, and make it easy to read. It's also good at going through and collaborating, where we didn't just create that one-time flowchart, but now we're going to have the AI actually analyze it. Now, we could certainly go through, and if there were aspects that we had that we wanted to make changes to, it's as simple as dictating those or typing out what those are in that element. This idea of where the teammate actually has access to tools is a next step further in the ability that generative AI has. And this is where we've heard a lot about generative AI, the step beyond this that we get into, and perhaps we can talk a little bit about this at AGM when we're together, is the next step where you actually get into agentic AI. And certainly I completely understand if that makes you roll your eyes or sit back a little bit and say, all right, another hype word from the technology companies. But this idea of what you're seeing here, where it's a tool and AI has gone through and it receives information, but then we give it access to other tools in order to do work. Where right now we gave it access for the ability to write code and then render that code or actually publish that code. What happens if we give it access to go and actually create a quote in draft mode, or draft an email response to one of our customers, or go through and help process a return or a warranty that comes through? This is where we get into that more part of automation, where the teammate itself actually has access to some of the actions that historically a human has had to go through and do that. So this tool, Claude, in generating out these workflows, analyzing them, can be used from anything from diagramming processes like contract flow or creating a quote. It can also help create diagrams of organization charts that you have available in that way. And it's remarkably good at doing that. And another tip that I'd give you is we'd say, all right, I use Visio. Now I need you to export this in a format for Visio so that I can make modifications myself. What I found is that more and more humans are required for last mile delivery on many of these things. And in this case, there are rarely instances, and I actually can't remember the last time where there's an instance that AI created an artifact for me, and what that artifact did, or what that artifact was, I copied and pasted it and sent it on its way. I'm always going through and working this and getting it into a modified state so that I feel comfortable with it. So that's Claude. Okay, we're going to show you one more with ChatGPT, and then we'll come back to it and wrap up on a few things. I generally have a more of a commercial focus when I work with distributors, and so this is very top of mind for me, where the ability to go through and work on creating quotes or going through and doing takeoff diagrams in areas like that is we're going to pretend we're going to tell ChatGPT that it's an applications engineer at a distributor, and we received an email. And I'm going to pull open what that email is here. And you see, this came from an email, and we reformatted a little bit for the purpose of the demo. I have it downloaded. I'm going to go ahead and drag it in where we received this email, and we're going to give ChatGPT some instructions. First, we're going to say, this is unstructured. We need to provide some structure to it. Then with that, while it's generating, we're going to list some constraints, identify missing information, and then we're going to summarize everything in a table with columns. And so it's going to pull this information out for us. And typically this does a pretty good job at getting information out. Now you'll notice it generated very, very fast with what came back here. And I think what we've seen is that these AI tools have tended more towards providing quick experiences because humans are impatient. But there's a trick that we can do. You remember how I talked about overcoming the system prompt and some of the inherent limitations that are there? For most individuals, if you pay for ChatGPT or the other tools, you have access to additional models. And this does get a little confusing, but basically the way to think about it is for more serious work where you are okay waiting for a better answer, if you go to O3 and then you go to O3 Pro, which only came out about 2 weeks ago, week and a half ago, you're going to get better information. It will almost always be longer. It will almost always be more complete. The prompt will almost always be followed to more specificity than what you had initially intended. So if we just switch over to O3 and we're going to say, do this again, what's going to happen here is you're going to see it's going to pop up and say thinking. Now, for any of my AI aficionados that are out there, you know that the model isn't really thinking. And there's a lot of debate around that word thinking. But what it's doing is it's breaking down the information that I'm providing it. And it's working to say, okay, how do we best answer this? What information do we have available? And it's taking more time. In scientific terms, it's generating more tokens in order to provide a better output. Now, it took 33 seconds, but the level of detail that it will come back with is almost always better than with 4.0. And most people, when they're working with a generative AI tool, never switch off. And rarely would they even go to a tool like O3 Pro, or would they invoke a tool like Deep Research, where it will go off and it will run for 30 minutes on analyzing a topic and providing breakdown in that way. So there's a lot of ways that type of the tools that they're now giving us can be put into play in order to both break out this quote and then to do next things like, okay, your tasks are now we have the information on this basic, on the request for information. It breaks it down into all sorts of elements. We can now say, build an equipment recommendation metrics with standard efficiency, high efficiency, ultra high efficiency. And it will go through and it will think through this. It will take a little bit of time, but the time that it takes a human to go through and do that is certainly more than an AI tool. And this process now becomes the time that it's taking, if it leads to a better outcome, is almost always acceptable. So you'll see it's analyzing and it's invoking a number of steps as it goes through. And this is always an interesting process to read how the AI is breaking down the problem. It's like how when we were in class and if you got the right answer on a math problem and the teacher said, hey, you didn't show your work, so you only get half credit. This shows its work and how we do it. And it'll go through and it'll keep thinking and it'll do some analysis. And then it'll break out the information down here. Now, I haven't connected it to data that internally at our systems that we have. We haven't gone through and we haven't validated this. So certainly that's a step that needs to happen. But what we have found more and more is that the information and the capabilities that these AI tools have continue to astound. I'll end with this. This idea of building this out and doing it in a prompt is one thing. What happens if we start to wrap that up in a little bit of, just a second here. What happens if we start to wrap this up in a little bit of a text to order generator, where we have created a series of instructions and we've trained it to say, you are an expert HVAC order taker. Here's information you get. Here's the flow that you need to go through. Here are questions you need to ask. Here's how we do consultations. Here's background information. And then what happens if we connect it to our internal data? What happens if we allow it to actually go and have access to that? You can do things like this, where we've created this and we can copy and paste in a text or an email, and we can say, I have a 2,000 square foot home. I need 2 zones. It's 2 stories, and I need the equipment by tomorrow. Give me a couple of options. We can get a text like this, and what the tool is going to go through and do is it will read the instructions, connect to our data, and allow us now to actually generate, for all intents and purposes, a real quote that we could go and analyze and review before we send back to the customer. This is where I get excited about understanding the capabilities, which I think is a step that many of us have skipped over in our excitement and in our haste to try and put this to good use and work and value. What can AI do right now? How do we now start wrapping that up, knowing its strengths, knowing its limitations? And then ultimately, how do we put this into a format that really can provide value at scale across our organizations? I'll end with this after this example here. Just going back to the presentations, there's all sorts of principles that I've thought about in working with distributors with AI. Overall, we overestimate the effect that a tech's going to have in the short term. With AI, we overestimate. There's a lot of hype and a lot of thoughts around that. But at the same time, over and over again, we've also underestimated the impact that it's going to have in the long term. Change with AI is going to continue to happen gradually and then suddenly. It was this post that I read on social media from head of developer relations. He used to be at OpenAI, now he's at Google, that got me thinking, where I don't focus on where AI is right now and what it can do now. I like to look at what it can do now, what it could previously do in the past, and then I draw a line through that and I start projecting out, where is this going? What is the impact that it has? And the best place that I find that distributors can start is focusing on the capabilities it has now, the value in some of these real tasks, analyzing product, doing market research, going through and breaking down quotes, being an additional teammate with a tool for you, analyzing customers, helping speed up back office processes, taking that accumulated intelligence and putting it into a format that we can work with. This has been a pleasure. I hope it's been as fun for you as it has for me. Thank you to HRAI for the opportunity, to Lauren, to Lauralee, and to the team there. I look forward to going into this more at HEM. We'll talk about how this doesn't just apply to distributors, but also to the entire supply chain. And we'll update. AI is going to do anything but stand still between now and September. I've also put my LinkedIn on here. I post a lot about AI in distribution and in the supply chain, and we'll be happy to connect and learn alongside you as we're all going through this together. So Lauralee, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you again.
Amazing presentation, Nick. Thank you all. Thank you. And thank you all so much for attending. I'm so happy we were able to lock you in, Nick, for this great opportunity. Fortunately, there are only a couple of questions and one question in the chat. One of the advantages of being the host is I get to shoehorn my own question in, and maybe this is something better dealt with by AI. For so long, we've been in an environment with the internet where I remember one internet expert saying, there's only one number one. There's only one Amazon. There's only one Google. There are all these other things, but there's only one leader. You just presented a number of sort of equals. And I'm wondering how, in your mind, and for our attendees, are we supposed to know which one to go to for which function? It sounds like ChatGPT might be, or is it more of a journey? Start with ChatGPT and then discover. Is that an easy answer?
It's what I've found, Lauren, for this. Let me answer it this way. The organizations that I've worked with and seen how they have become comfortable with AI, typically what they've done is they've gone to the we'll say the more digitally fluent in the organization, which tend to be the recent college graduates or even the interns, and they've said, you have a knowledge of these tools, you have a desire to continue learning about these tools. What should we be using each one for? And that has been a really powerful way, actually, for organizations to both include the younger generation in new leaders in this process of helping to find out the technology roadmap for the organization, while also making everyone aware what's the best way to do it. Now, all that aside, each one of the tools has different strengths and weaknesses and different access to things. I would say for most organizations, if you're looking at getting started and you want a really good multi-purpose tool, you can do a lot of what I shared today in ChatGPT. There might just be an extra step or two that you have to go through.
Okay,
that's how I'd answer that one, Lauren.
That's good. I'm going to turn it over to Laura-Lee with sort of apologies to everyone that, no, not an apology. We're probably going to go a little bit over time. Stick around if you want to. Again, the recording will be available on YouTube. Over to you, Laura-Lee.
Okay, great. A few quick questions. I'm just going back, Nick, to your, I guess, your process mapping, the flow chart that you created. Yeah. Juliana's asking how you uploaded the transcript. Was that a Word document? And could you have included multiple documents in that upload for the AI to analyze?
It's a great question. These AI tools have a capability that's called multimodal. Man, I'm getting tripped up on my words here, Laura-Lee. Multimodal, meaning they have the ability to read text that we input into it. They can read files, they can read pictures, and at some point they're going to be able to analyze video as well. So what I did for that one is I copied and pasted in an example of a transcript. So I just copied and pasted it over. But you do have the ability to actually load in a file, whether that's a Word doc or a PDF. And yes, you can also load in multiple files. I think the limit is 10 files, but there's a trick to that. They don't give a length on how long those files can be. And so those files can be dozens and dozens. We've loaded in multiple PDFs that are hundreds of pages long. And about a year ago, the large language models would get lost, but they're now very good at very long context questions like that. So yeah, have at it. Load in multiple conversations. If you reach that 10 file limit, then start concatenating things together. And that's where you have to learn some of the workarounds of just kind of these products. The intelligence is really good, but the product itself is still maturing, I'd say.
Excellent, thank you. This is an interesting question about how do we change our websites to rank highly with large language models, like we used to do with Google, I guess. Oh, we might have lost Nick. Are you there? Yeah.
No, are you still there, Laura-Lee? Yep. I heard the question, but I think I froze it for a moment.
Yeah, you did for a second there.
Perfect. Well, I'll answer this. And what I'd say is for a long time, marketing was based off of search engine optimization. The emerging field is now how do we leverage large language models? And I forget if they call it large language model engine optimization or AI optimization. But the idea is you want to continue to provide content. These models are hungry for data. They're hungry for information about your company, descriptions. They're hungry for long context. So you can both continue to write on your website and provide information because these tools will go out and they'll scour the internet and bring information back in. And there are ways that you can actually use AI to help you do that, to help you expand out what maybe was a short description on your website. You can build it out even larger than that. That is an emerging field. And I'd also give you this tip. For something like this, ask AI. Give AI the description of what you want to do and ask how it would walk you through a plan in order to get up and running there.
Excellent. I think on that note, Ask AI is probably a really good place to wrap this up, just in the interest of time, and I'll pass it back to Lauren. Nick, would you be able to answer some questions maybe after the fact? We didn't get to all of them.
Frozen again.
Yeah.
Probably had a 1 hour timer on his computer. Paid by the hour.
Time's up.
Yeah, so I'm in regular communications with Nick, certainly in anticipation of our upcoming AGM, and he's been nothing but friendly and helpful. Nick, thank you again. Hopefully you can hear me now.
I don't know what happened there, Lawrence.
Well, that's okay. That's okay. We do have some outstanding questions. I'm in constant contact with you in anticipation of the AGM. We'll get them answered one way or another. I have some other ideas for sharing Nick's brain power with our members as an ongoing basis. But needless to say, you've given us all a lot of inspiration and a very, very accessible way into this. Just the fact that you were talking to these different engines in your own voice with lots of ums and ahs in there. And by the way, hats off for proper pronunciation of Toronto. So kudos for that. Yeah, just a brilliant presentation. We look forward to seeing you again at the AGM. And hey, thanks to everyone who showed up and stuck around. Another great sign of a fantastic webinar is nobody left until we hit the hour mark. So thanks for that. We'll see you all again soon. Keep your eye on our events page for more great webinars. Laura Lee, Nick, be well.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Laura Lee.